Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder. Today we're diving deep into Lifeway Foods Incorporated's proxy statement. You know, the one where they give shareholders the rundown on everything important happening with the company. And boy, do they have some interesting stuff this year, including a little boardroom drama. So imagine this, it is December 2025. And Lifeway Foods Incorporated is getting ready for its annual shareholder meeting. But this year, it is not just about hearing about the company's performance. There is a bit of a fight brewing over who gets to be on the company's board of directors. Shareholder named Edward Smolyansky is pushing his own candidates to replace some of the board's picks. We're going to unpack all of this from the fight for director seats to the company's financials and what it all means for you. First off, the big meeting is happening on the 29th of December 2025. It is virtual this year, which is pretty common now. You need to register beforehand to get in, and you'll need a special control number from your proxy card. That is your golden ticket to participate and vote. Now, what exactly are shareholders voting on? There are several key things. First, electing 8 members to the board of directors. This is where the main drama is, with the company's slate of nominees versus Edward Smolyansky's opposing nominees. Then, to approve changes to the company's founding documents, called Articles of Incorporation. These changes are about making things official, like director exculpation and indemnification, which basically means protecting directors in certain situations. They're also voting to approve their auditor, Grant Thornton LLP, for fiscal year 2025. And like most public companies, they'll have an advisory vote on how much they pay their top executives and how often shareholders should get to vote on executive pay. Finally, there is a shareholder proposal from Edward Smolyansky himself, asking for a new board committee to review management, the company's plans, and its strategic options. The company's board is strongly recommending you vote for their chosen directors and withhold your vote for these opposition nominees. They are really pushing back against Edward Smolyansky's picks, and they want to make sure you know that if you've already voted with Smolyansky, you can totally change your mind by voting with the company's white proxy card again. It is important to know that because of a rule called the Universal Proxy Card, the company's white card will list both their nominees and the opposition nominees, so you have to be super careful to vote only for who the board recommends. Let's talk about these directors. The board has its own 8 nominees, and Edward Smolyansky is nominating 2 people, George Cent and Edward Smolyansky himself, to challenge 2 of the board's picks. The company's board is saying loud and clear, vote for our slate and withhold votes from Smolyansky's nominees. They even mention a cooperation agreement with Danone North America PBC, where Danone agreed to vote for the board's slate. This suggests a strategic alliance. It is clear the current board sees the opposition nominees as a threat. Now, for the Articles of Incorporation amendments, Proposal 2 is actually 2 parts. First, they want to clean up the company's founding documents with some minor changes. More importantly though, they want to add director exculpation and indemnification. This means directors will have more legal protection against lawsuits related to their decisions, as long as they acted in good faith and did not engage in intentional misconduct or illegal activity. This is pretty standard practice for public companies aiming to attract and retain qualified directors who might otherwise be hesitant due to potential personal liability. They've also clarified that these changes are prospective, meaning they won't apply to past actions. The board believes this is in the best interest of the company and shareholders, as it balances director accountability with the need to attract good people. They've also made it clear these changes won't affect any current lawsuits. The vote requires a 2/3 majority of outstanding shares, which is a pretty high bar. It shows how serious they are about getting these protections in place. Proposal 3 is pretty straightforward. Shareholders are asked to ratify Grant Thornton LLP as the independent auditor for 2025. They've used Grant Thornton since December 2022, so this is more of a formality to keep shareholders in the loop and ensure good corporate governance. A representative from Grant Thornton will be at the meeting to answer questions. Proposal 4 is the say on pay vote. This is where shareholders get to give their 2 cents on how much the company is paying its top executives. Even though the last vote leaned towards reviewing pay every 3 years, the board decided to do it annually now, believing more frequent shareholder input is beneficial. They say they listen to shareholder feedback and will consider the vote when making future compensation decisions. Interestingly, the shareholder approval for executive pay went up from about 54.8% in 2023 to 58.5% in 2024. The company claims they actively engage with their top shareholders to understand their perspectives. They even reached out to 25 of their largest shareholders. Many of these shareholders were concerned about things like risk oversight. cybersecurity and succession planning. The company also had to address questions about the consent solicitation by Edward Smolyansky and the offer from Danone. It sounds like shareholders generally praised the company's leadership during a tough period. Proposal 5 asks how often shareholders want to vote on executive compensation every year, every 2 years, or every 3 years. In 2019, shareholders voted for every 3 years, but now the board thinks annual votes are better for more frequent shareholder input. They specifically recommend voting for every year. This shows a shift towards more regular shareholder engagement on compensation. Proposal 6 is the shareholder proposal from Edward Smolyansky. He wants a new committee of independent directors, appointed only after a certain date, to review the company's management, strategic plan, and alternatives. His argument is that the current board hasn't done a good enough job, especially since Danone decided not to acquire Lifeway. He believes this has hurt shareholders' ability to get a good return. He wants new directors who were not involved in the past decisions to do these reviews. The board, however, recommends voting against this proposal. Their reasons are pretty strong. They point out that the compensation committee, made up entirely of independent directors, already evaluates management. They also highlight the upcoming board refreshment, agreeing with Danone that new independent directors will be in charge of these decisions well before June 2026. They trace a history of board changes, bringing in new expertise and increasing independence over the years. The company also strongly criticizes Mr. Smolyansky's past actions, noting his termination for cause as QO and his past advocacy for a sale even when the stock was much lower. On the financial front, they're touting some impressive numbers. They say total shareholder return is 788% over the last 5 years, outperforming peers and the S&P 500. Revenue has grown approximately 100% since fiscal year 2019. That is a massive jump, essentially doubling their sales in a few years. They're also celebrating 6 years of uninterrupted quarterly net sales growth, with a record third quarter in 2025 showing a 29% increase driven by their flagship Lifeway kefir. Gross margin expansion and net income growth are also on the upswing, pointing to solid operational execution. This looks like a company hitting its stride. Let's peek at the executive compensation. For 2024, Julie Smolyansky, the CEO, took home a total compensation of over $5.3 million. This included her salary, stock awards, a nice chunk from a non-equity incentive plan, and a significant amount in all other compensation. This all other compensation for her in 2024 was a whopping over $2 million, which turns out to be a retention bonus. Eric Hansen, the CFO, earned about $846,000, and Amy Feldman, SVP of Sales, earned around $771,000 for 2023. Julie Smolyansky's total compensation was around $3.37 million. Eric Hansen's was about $805,000, and Amy Feldman's was about $740,000. The big jump in CEO compensation in 2024 is primarily due to that retention bonus. When you look at the compensation actually paid numbers, which adjust for year, and equity awards that might vest later, the CEO's compensation in 2024 was around $10 million, while for non-CEO executives, it averaged about $1.48 million. This is quite a bit higher than the numbers reported directly in the summary compensation table. It suggests that a good chunk of their reported compensation is tied to long-term incentives that may not be fully realized yet. Julie Smolyansky has a pretty substantial employment agreement. Her base salary is $1 million and she is eligible for bonuses based on performance. She also gets equity awards if she is terminated without cause or leaves for good reason. She is entitled to significant severance, including her base salary and bonus at a higher rate in case of a change in control. This severance package is quite generous, especially the multiplier for a change in control. Now let's look at who owns what. Julie Smolyansky herself owns about 17.51% of the company. Edward Smolyansky, who is running the proxy contest, owns a significant 20.09%. Ludmila Smolyansky holds about 6.08%, and then there is Danone North America PBC, a major player owning a large 22.69%. It is clear that ownership is concentrated among a few key parties, giving them considerable influence over the company's direction. Turning to corporate governance, the Audit and Corporate Governance Committee, made up of independent directors, oversees financial reporting and the auditors. They've reviewed the 2024 financial statements and are recommending them for filing. Everything seems to be in order on the audit front. Grant Thornton billed Lifeway Foods incorporated $441,388 in 2024 and $441,180 in 2023, all for audit fees. There were no audit-related tax or other fees billed by them. This indicates a straightforward, focused relationship with their auditor, without any unusual advisory work. So what is the story here? Lifeway Foods Incorporated seems to be performing quite well financially lately, with strong revenue growth and positive shareholder returns. The board is actively trying to set up structures to protect directors and has a clear strategy to incentivize executives through performance-based pay. However, there is a significant battle brewing for control of the board. Edward Smolyansky's substantial ownership stake and his shareholder proposals suggest a major disagreement with the current leadership and their strategic direction. His proposal for a new review committee, though opposed by the board, highlights a shareholder's desire for more scrutiny on management and strategic choices, especially after the missed acquisition opportunity with Danone. The concentrated ownership also means that these key players will continue to have a major impact on the company's future. All in all, Lifeway Foods Incorporated is navigating a complex landscape, balancing financial performance with internal power struggles and shareholder activism. The upcoming annual meeting will be pivotal in determining the direction of the company, especially with the contested director elections and the shareholder proposal. Now, looking at these results more broadly, Lifeway Foods Incorporated appears to be on an upward trajectory in terms of sales and financial performance. The company's strategy of focusing on its flagship kefir product and expanding distribution seems to be paying off handsomely. The board's efforts to get director exculpation and indemnification in place, while standard practice, also signal a proactive approach to governance. However, the ongoing activism from Edward Smolyansky and the concentrated ownership structure do present some risks, as they could lead to continued uncertainty or strategic disagreements within the company. The key takeaway here is that while the financials look good, shareholder engagement and board dynamics will be crucial to watch. Alright, that is our breakdown of Lifeway Foods Incorporated's latest filing. What is your take on these numbers and what they signal for the company's future? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this analysis was valuable, hitting that like button really helps, and subscribe for more deep dives. Don't forget to check out the Discord in the description. Thanks for watching. See you next time.